everyone, and welcome to episode 81 of the Rich Cheese Radio Podcast, your place for horological hot takes, taboo topics, and often unpopular watch opinions. My name is Schmidt, and as always, I'm joined by my good buddy. You guys know him, you love him, Mr. Bro Dinky. What's going on, bro?
Schmidt, it's been a bit of an exhausting week. I don't have to tell you. You and I have been sort of just ships in the night trying to get this episode locked down, if we will.
Yeah,
Apologies to our listeners. We usually drop these on Monday, but yeah, it's just been a tough one trying to get things on the same page and just life comes at you fast sometimes. So just with Mother's Day and a couple other big days sort of thrown into the same few day span. It's been a little challenging sort of getting on the same page, but we're here. We got it done. We're going to have this one out a little late for this week, but still out nonetheless.
yeah, absolutely.
How are things by you, bud?
Good, man. It's been a busy week for me as well. A lot of traveling, a lot of work stuff, so a little bit more unorthodox for me recording on the road. But it's a fun experience and glad to be doing it and glad to be recording an episode for this week. So I'm here. I'm existing.
Yeah, good to see you, man. I know we had a few weeks there. We got back on track last week, but I didn't want to get too far off the track again this week. So I did want to make it a point to get one in the can here because we don't really have we don't really record ahead. We don't have any sort of pre-canned episodes that we could just sort of throw out there when we're like, oh, you know what, we're not going to make a week. We'll use the one that we got stored up. Like we like to keep things pretty fresh and pretty on the cutting edge of news and things like that. So we really don't put any in the hopper for emergency purposes. So that's why every once in a while you'll have something like this where it's going to be a few days later. We have to kind of move things around because yeah, we don't want to give you that stale stuff. So again, apologies, but we hope you appreciate that on the other end as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you guys for the well wishes too. I know a lot of you guys reached out to us and asking if we were all good, everything was okay. Yes, just scheduling conflict, but appreciate that you guys were willing to take the time out of your day to reach out to us and share that you can't wait till we come back. So we're here.
Yeah, and speaking of thanks, some pretty cool news um, from a listener actually. Uh, so since we've sort of gone on a little bit of a tangent about the resin Seiko. It's gaining a little traction. People have sort of started picking them up and just checking them out because they're a neat little release and they're kind of off the beaten path and they're a little nuanced and harder to get. So somebody who had picked up a few, they're actually kicking one in and they want to give one up for Real Men this year. So
Oh,
that's gonna be cool.
cool.
Yeah, cool little neat little prize. The one that we both have, the SRP G81, the matte
Nice.
gray, grayed out version. So thanks to our listener. I believe the handle is GM alumni. I don't know if that's George Mason or what, but many thanks. I know the watch came all the way from Europe, so again, that's cool. So in addition to the Haim L2, we've got a cool little resin Seiko. Still working on a few other things. Strap habits in the works. We're probably going to do something cool with the anti-watch guys as well. So keep a
Hmm.
lookout for that. I've got plenty of feelers out on the bigger front of some of the bigger players. Haven't heard anything back yet, but they also move pretty slow, usually per my experience. So I don't know if I'm being shunned or if they're just you know things are just going at the usual glacial pace. But we'll find out eventually. But we're going to kick things off sort of a little closer to October this year, I think, just to um just to make it a little less annoying for everybody and kind of try to really make our mark within the I guess the marketable time of season. So we'll mention it as things go on, but it's really going to pick up probably towards the end of summer, early fall. You'll see a lot of that stuff come out, the straps and everything. So, something to keep an eye out for, but I thought I would just fill everybody in because, people have been checking out the resin Seikos and I've been wearing mine a ton. I mean, it's a super easy watch to wear and it's definitely a great beater. So, I'm really excited to get that in somebody else's hands as well because it's sort of a niche release as to where it's been. So Definitely some folks that are stateside I think would be interested in that. So that's cool.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, all right. I guess let's hop in the new stuff. Plenty of it since we've last spoke. This is one I may or may not have known it was coming a little while in advance, thanks to some friends in some high places, but very stoked about the Zodiac Seacron. This
Nice.
this is a callback. It's a legacy model. I believe it's their only chronograph that I could think of.
Yeah, it must be actually.
Yeah, I mean, most Zodiacs I think of are divers or GMTs. There's a few interesting ones there in the mix, but you don't necessarily think of chronographs when you think of Zodiac. But I've always looked at these on the vintage market, and they've gone for a lot of money, upwards of like 4,000 before. So I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna do that. I don't know enough about them in that respect to be able to hunt one down and feel good about it.
Yeah.
If I'm gonna go after something on the vintage market, I want to be able to almost be able to ensure that it's legit from my end. I mean, I not that I don't trust people, but
Well,
you do your
it's
homework.
yeah, and absolutely. And the other aspect of it too is you got to think about servicing, can you source old parts if you want to keep it all new old stock? There's so many extra things that come into play here. Plus, let's be honest, those vintage examples, they were brutalized. They got abused really, really hard. So like so many of the other Seawolves and some of the other super Seawolves from the era as well, they were put to the test and people used them unforgivingly, and they were tools back then. So a lot of water damage, a lot of potential for bubbling dials and all kinds of crazy stuff that typically happens with those watches. So I don't blame you, man. It's really a crapshoot to see if you can get one in good condition and all original parts. It's very difficult.
Yeah, and it's sort of a brand that I think everybody's sort of become keen on recently, and even on the vintage market, I think people are starting to see sort of where that hype came from. It didn't just come out of left field, where they've had some dynamite pieces in the past, and I think this is one of them.
Yeah.
And now you're getting sort of a modernized package of it. I mean, the bracelet looks really good. The overall aesthetic, I mean, it's somewhat your basic diver chrono, but at the same time, it's got a lot of zodiac cues. I like the 12 o'clock circular index a lot.
Yep.
The graduations around the bezel and the handset. There are things that still let you know this is a zodiac and not just your sort of run of the mill watch that anybody could have cranked out. But definitely cool to see. So I'm excited to check this one out in person. I'm sure it's going to make the rounds soon. So
Yeah, and I can't wait to see what they're going to do with the collection because I can
yeah.
only imagine this is probably the beginning,
And
right?
I mean, they are one of the better brands that do color in a really
Yes.
cool and unapologetic way, right?
Yeah.
They do the lime greens, they do the sherbets, they do all sorts of crazy things. So to see a watch like this, I mean, imagine this in like a watermelon configuration,
I was thinking exactly the same thing. I was thinking
right?
exactly the
Pink
same
and
thing.
green, that would be
Yeah,
dynamite.
it would be amazing. It would be really, really cool.
I hope
And
they do that now.
I mean, it would kind of give me studio underdog vibes,
Oh yeah,
kind of
yeah, yeah, totally.
that look. But like you said, they do color so well. It's innate to their DNA. It's fantastic to see them do it. And I know this is only going to be the beginning. And maybe they play with this in ceramic or other, materials that they can do now as well too. So it'll be really exciting to see where the Seacron goes forward. Plus, I mean, right now, even if you opt for just the standard versions, the blue and the black are fantastic colorways.
Yeah, that
I
blue looks really good.
Yeah, I was gonna say I lean more towards the blue, personally, but either option it will be fantastic.
Yeah, I keep picturing it in that sort of Gulf motif, maybe like with like the
That would
similar
also
to
be
that sea
cool.
wolf with the black dial with like that really bright blue and the orange. I think that would be absolutely killer as well, especially because you know the Gulf motif sort of has a home with chronographs, right? When you think about like the tag Heuer connection and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
uh it's definitely a ton of room to play with, and I'm excited to see what happens.
yeah, me too, me too.
All right. Next up, we got a good amount of Seiko here. Um, so they have two renditions of a playful release with an old friend. So they have the SRPK 25 and the SRPK 27, and they are the sort of Seiko 5 diver esque model and sort of the, what would you call it, like a piloty field model.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of somewhere in between that.
Yeah,
Um,
and they're both sporting our old friend Snoopy, who is no stranger to watches, and everybody seems to enjoy. So, a welcome addition to Seiko. Finally, you've had him on Omega, you've had him on Timex. Now he's over here, and each one he's kind of doing something different. On the diver, he looks like he's got a surfboard, and he's on the
yeah,
beach. On the field watch, it looks like he's I don't know what he's doing. It just says chop 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 on it.
I don't know either.
I've been
I
trying
don't
to
know
figure this
either.
out. I'm really not sure, but you get a hint of yellow with the tip of the second hand to match Woodstock. I think it's really hard to tell what's going on that on the field one. I really don't know what it is.
Yeah, man, it's certainly an interesting thing. But it's good to see, such a beloved cartoon character, grace another dial and another brand. Obviously he makes his rounds with a lot of different collaborations, but it's cool. It's nice to see it. It's playful. I like kind of the different approaches they focus on with kind of more the monochromatic look.
Yeah, you're getting very very plain pure white dials here with nothing but
Yeah,
black
yeah.
accents. So they're very clean models. Maybe a little plain Jane for some, but I think with the Snoopy on the dial, I think it makes it interesting enough.
I just realized what it is.
What is it?
So his ears are spinning like a helicopter. Goes
Okay,
so he's like a pilot, and
I
that makes
get it.
sense because it's a
Yep.
military pilot
Okay.
watch, right?
See, yeah, just that wasn't clear enough. It looks like there's just a hole above his head. Like it looks like he's getting dropped out of a wormhole.
Oh man, yeah, that's funny. That's funny.
Okay, so he's a helicopter. I get it. I get it.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
yeah. We got it. We solved
All right.
it.
Okay.
But
But
cool
yeah,
release nevertheless. It's
cool, playful. I think people enjoy it who want it, who are into the whole Snoopy thing. So, it's one of those things. If you're not into it, you're not going to buy it. Who cares? So
yeah.
that's all right. And then on the other hand, Rowing Blazers has dropped another set of the Seiko 5 street editions or
Speaking of
sport
collabs,
editions. Yeah, speaking of collabs. Uh so SRP J 65, 67, 69, and 71. You're getting a lot of pastel, I guess here. It's purple, pink dial, yellow dial, white dial with multicolor indices. Yeah, one of them is sort of like a Jamaican vibe to it. Uh, I'll be honest. Again, I don't really know where to place these. I can kind of take them or leave them. They're okay. I like the kanji day wheel. Not so into the second hand. I don't love this case as a whole, but
this to me is just a perfect like youthful fun, college prep kind of watch in terms of style. I mean, it's kind of the Rowing Blazers design aesthetic. It's kind of like, J. Crew, Brooks Brothers, all these
yeah,
years
that's
ago.
what I'm getting here. Yeah.
So it's a lot more on that prep style, which is cool. I mean, I think, you think about a lot of like, classic clothing. It is in pastels. It is in more vibrant colors. So I think a lot of this makes sense given their brand DNA. As you pointed out, it's in that kind of dress KX case. Not really my favorite, personally speaking. But I can see where a lot of people could love it, especially if you're into the pastel vibe, as a lot of brands are. You got the OPs that came out a couple years
Yep.
ago in the vibrant colors. This is kind of leaning into that aesthetic as well. So I think it's a cool release. Roaring Blazer seems to be everywhere now. They did the initial Seiko collab, then another Seiko collab, and now Tudor's collab, and then now this one again. So this is a brand that's certainly on the rise, at least in popularity and cultural significance. So very interesting to see that. Very cool, but not a watch for me per se.
Yeah, I think it fits almost in that. sort of when you see those Hodinkee articles about what to get your high school grad, to me this fits a little better than maybe a $2,000 Nomos.
Yeah,
You know, like
exactly. Exactly.
getting an 18-year-old kid a $2,000 watch, maybe not ideal, but at least this one, if they bang it around, they lose it, they damage the crystal, no big deal, right? You can feel fine about it and even replace it perhaps at not too steep of a price. So that's kind of the vibe I get when I look at these. I'm like, oh, okay, this would be cool for some a younger person maybe who maybe isn't into watches or maybe just kind of likes that preppy motif, but isn't necessarily looking for an expensive timepiece. So I could see maybe that's where it fits in.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's it's a perfect place for it. It's a nice beater. Nice way to
Yeah.
get your feet wet, if you will.
Yeah. I will hit Grand Seiko here before I go on. So Grand Seiko has a limited edition. It is the SBGA 485, and this is the apricot blossom. So you're getting some pink. It looks like a pink Kirizuri dial. It's got a red second hand, red PR hand, red spring drive text, and then some gold accents in there too. This is just them doing what they do, mixing around with the colors, mixing around with the textures, um, and throwing in a limited edition because that's what they like to do. So
Yeah, absolutely. That's a beautiful, beautiful watch, by the way. Again, you guys know I'm not really the biggest Grand Seiko guy. I can certainly appreciate it, but I think this watch, the finishing is fantastic. It's a nice kind of pastel pink. It almost has a little bit of like an orangey color to it in there as well. But I like that's highlighted with the alternate accents as well. It just gives it a little bit of pop. And I like that case design a lot as well. I think that's probably one of the better cases that Grand Seiko does. It's very clean, very symmetrical. It just looks really, really polished. So, very cool design.
yeah, this is killer, and I'm obviously I'm a fan of Grand Seiko. I like the pink motif. I have the pink shunbuns, so this is very much up my alley. And this would be like a top watch. Like if I could just like have any watch to give away or to put towards charity, this would be like top five. I mean, this is a sick dial. This would be something I would be like, you know, super enthused over because it's nuts, and it's also limited, so even better. But
Yeah, yeah, super rare.
yeah, so this would be top of the props, but again, super limited. And I'm sure it is a lot of money, so that's probably not going to happen. All right, let's go on to one that has raised enough eyebrows, and I'm sure everybody's kind of waiting for us to touch on this week. Hublot and
Oh,
Nespresso have got together and collaborated on a Big Bang Unico, and it's made from Nespresso pods and coffee grinds.
this is a dumpster fire of a release.
Oh, good God in heaven. What the hell is this?
I really don't know, man. I mean, the color's cool if you like green. It's certainly a bold color. I get the idea behind it, right? It's all about being green. It's all about being recyclable and giving back to the environment. Processing things down to make them into other materials. I think that's kind of a cool innovation, just from the technological aspect of being able to take, something like coffee grounds, something like recycled materials, and turn them into something else. I think that is pretty cool, but I don't necessarily know if I want my watch made out of recycled material. Because let's be honest, your watch is made out of trash, legitimately.
There's enough Hublot trash jokes out there for this one. All right, I don't think we have to touch on that, but
No, no, no.
this
It's just,
only drives it home further.
yeah, absolutely. It's literally made out of trash. Which again, take it or leave it. In terms of like, are you an eco warrior or not? It doesn't matter. I think again, the technology is cool. I don't know if I necessarily want to spend Hublot money at retail to buy a watch in collaboration with Nespresso. Um, it's such an odd collaboration, two industries that don't necessarily interlink really much at all. So I, I don't know, man. I really don't like this watch. I like the technology behind it, but I don't really like the watch at all. And I'm not the biggest Hublot fan. I don't really know too many people that are. But certainly interesting as well. I also found it interesting that Nespresso kind of superseded Hublot and put their logo on the crown,
Oh wow.
which which is crazy. And as much as the design of this watch is interesting, one of the things I thought was kind of silly that they didn't do is if you're going to do a watch collaboration with Nespresso, why didn't you make the crown look like an espresso pod? Like that to me is just like a missed opportunity there.
That does make sense now that you mention it.
Right? Like, I mean, how easy would it have made to make a bulbous crown that looks like an espresso pod? I was like, that was the first thing I saw when I saw the rendering. I was like, really? You couldn't even have done that? But, what do I know? I'm not a product designer.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I don't know if it's just the photo I'm looking at or if this is how they do their things, but one thing I've always appreciated about watches like the Royal Oak is that the screws are always turned so that they,
Oh, perfect.
yes, are perfect, and these are not. The like this. So what I'm saying is
That's
the screws. So example, if there's a screw at 10 and 4, the the groove in the screw will, it would almost be like you could draw a line straight through both screws through the 10 and the 4,
yeah,
perfectly symmetrically through the watch. And
yeah.
here they're just all over the damn place. And it's, I don't know if I'm being too picky or if this bothers anybody else, like, but it's just kind of throwing my eye.
No, man, this is something that's so many people have pointed out about Hublot in the past is these little details, right? How can these other brands do it? I mean, freaking even Cartier can do it, right? So how can other brands do this? And this is something that a watch that's costing more money than most people can spend comfortably on a timepiece, and yet those little nuances are completely overlooked. Doesn't make sense. You know what this really feels like to me?
What's that?
This feels like, a big person at Nespresso and a big person at Hublot were at a bar grabbing drinks, and they're like, we should do a collaboration because I want a cool watch, right? And so they just kind of made a watch for this big wig kind of guy. And then they're like, we should make it commercially available and sell it.
Everybody
It's
likes coffee, right?
it's just it's such a weird association between the two. It's such a weird collaboration. Again, as I mentioned before, technology is kind of cool behind it being recyclable and green and all that stuff, but it's just this ain't it, fam. Nobody
Yeah,
wants to trash Hublot.
and even then, we've seen people work the sustainable angle for it. We've seen the Oris upcycle,
Yeah,
right? We've seen bioceramic and things like that, where you're taking either recycled materials or natural materials and kind of reworking them. Yeah, I just don't know what the angle is here. And not for nothing, Nespresso, if you were going to do a collab with a watch brand, there is literally a brand called Brew that has a coffee bean for a logo. Like WTF.
yeah, that's that's totally true. I didn't even think about
Maybe
that.
that's just too on the nose, but it makes perfect sense to me.
Yep.
Yeah. So, again, we've seen some good trash in the past. This is I guess bad trash. I don't know. But like you said, dumpster fire works out. But I think people have been sort of waiting for us to have at this one. So somebody was funny enough. I don't know if you caught it. He put an espresso pot on his wrist
I
and sent me a
saw that.
picture of it.
I
That
saw
was
that.
pretty funny. I give props when props are due. So that was a good one. Um, all right, going from there to some other green stuff. Maybe I'll let you take this one because we have a new Omega Seamaster Aquaterra World Timer.
Yeah, so it's so apparently according to the launch of it as of a few days ago this week, Omega launched three new versions of its World Timer collection that it launched a couple years back. Back then, I think the first one was done in platinum. Then that progressed into a gold version on bracelet and leather strap, and then steel on rubber and steel bracelet. So
Yeah.
a few different versions in the collection. This is now three new additions. Um, they're cool, man. I like them. I think the green colorway is really nice. Um, this is a slight upgrade over the previous versions as well because they now feature a brushed ceramic bezel for the Aquaterra.
Nice.
This is something that I didn't know if I would like. Um, I saw the initial photos and I was like, whoa, what is this? But I think it's very cool. It's certainly a bold step for Omega to do this because I know, having owned an Aquaterra myself, that that is one of the biggest downsides of that watch is that bezel just gets trashed. It's like a smooth bezel Rolex. It just gets beat to
Yeah.
hell.
Yep. Scratch
And
magnet.
it's a scratch magnet, dude. It really is. And I think that hopefully with this new type of ceramic that they're utilizing on the bezel, that'll alleviate a lot of those issues. Um, and we'll take care of that from an aesthetic standpoint. So I think it's very cool. I'm excited to see these in person. I think the titanium one is the best of the three.
Yeah, it's a beast.
Um, it's super cool. It's very monochromatic, but not too monochromatic where it's illegible. I really love the kind of gold accents that they did on the world map as well. I think this is a home run for them, and I'm excited to see these when they finally hit stores. So hopefully that's sometime soon.
Yeah, and you get a little bit of like the safari vibe almost from the green and gold. I like that. It's got some khaki on the globe and everything. And they made these via laser ablation, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I know we've
So
talked a little bit about it in the past. It's more or less it's using lasers to create height on the dial, right?
so it's done in two different ways. So primarily the area that's really laser ablated is the world map.
Right.
So what I know from the previous generation of the world timers is they would take the globe, and the globes themselves were made out of titanium. I don't know if this one is, but I know on the steel version it certainly was. And they would basically use different temperatures of laser
Yep.
to cut the
This is
titanium,
coming back
but
to me.
also color it to change it a certain color. So that's how they were able to get the greens, the browns, and the blues on that respective world map. Now, with this one being that it's green, kind of more of a tannish color, gold color, I don't know if it's the same process. I would imagine that it would be, but I haven't seen too many people cover all the intricacies yet about this one. So I'm excited to see it when it finally hits the stores. But I will say the other one, the titanium one, that dial is finished using laser ablation as well. So if you look at both of the steel version and the titanium side by side, you'll notice that the steel version the steel version has kind of like these vertical lines that go up and down around the dial.
Yep.
It kind of symbolizes kind of like a longitude, latitude lines on the world map. You don't have that on titanium. So they did more of like a almost like a blasted look, and that's done using the laser ablation to kind of create this blasted satiny texture. So I think it's fantastic. I think they're amazing looking watches. If anybody was holding out for an Aquaterra World Timer, this is probably the one to get.
All right. And that will bring us, I guess, to our little mini topic of today. Um, this is kind of one kind of came out of left field because I follow a lot of people who sell vintage stuff and who focus on sort of the quirky and the out there, and they do some fun like weekly stuff where they'll post like kind of ridiculous vintage models that you didn't know existed or that are just super weird and uncharacteristic. And so I wanted to do an episode and just talk a little bit about some that are some of my favorites and then yours because I just think they're fun. I mean, I think something like the almost like the Zodiac astrographic comes to mind, right? Something that's kind of out of left field, maybe
Yeah.
not so characteristic for that brand that you wouldn't have pictured if somebody said, "Hey, have you ever seen the Zodiac?" And you, all right, well, what is it? A sea wolf? Is it, what could it be? Oh, it's this crazy thing with floating hands, and it's way out there, right? And you're just like, what the heck is this? So I enjoy those. I enjoy watches like that, sort of the oddballs and the black sheep, and I guess the watches that keep the hobby weird, which is also kind of the fun part of it for me. So yeah, I think a lot of along those lines, um, but in almost a cool way, not so much like the Code 1159 way, where it's
Yeah.
just like the black sheep, like the black eye of the collection. Like I don't want that. Like I think cool stuff or sort of just like off the reservation stuff that you would never picture a brand doing. Um, and I guess got I sort of started to fall in love with these when I started experiencing like the Seiko tunas and the Seiko Arnis and those bulky cases that you're like when I first started collecting, I was just like, who the hell could be into this? And I was like, I kind of warmed up to it, and I was like, all right, well, let me try it on. All right, well,
Hmm.
this is kind of
And
neat.
that's
Now,
how it
now I kind,
starts.
yeah, now I kind of like it. All right, it's quirky, it's a behemoth, it's a golem, it's a bit of a refrigerator, but I'm enjoying this. Like it grows on you slowly, and I think that's sort of the fun part about quirky watches, and sort of the ones that maybe not everybody goes after. So I thought it would be cool to talk a little bit about that. I have one in particular that I'll start with that kind of kicked this off because I saw it and I was like, what the hell is this? And I was extremely surprised by the name on the dial. So I'm going to start with the Doxa Graphic, Grafic. So take a look at this, right? It's an oldie, it's a square watch, it's got an 11 o'clock date.
I've literally never seen this watch
Yeah,
before
I
in my
came
entire
across
life.
it. I was like, what on earth is this? And then I see in the bottom right corner it says Doxa, and this appears that it was a pretty well produced line. I mean, there's a few different variations. They have some cool stuff like almost like the spider dial that comes on the Nevadas. You got some gold
Yeah.
cases. There. It was definitely meant to be sort of a dress line, a la Cartier, a la all those sort of vintage tank looks. But this is just so
This is
weird. It's
nuts.
11 o'clock date, and it's angled too. It's angled sort of to symmetrically bisect the watch. So it's just a strange offering. And again, I know Docs have made other watches other than
Yeah, other than divers,
their
yeah, for sure.
divers. I know they're not nearly as popular, and they're again, I think people like Doxa because it's sort of a quirky brand and it has those sort of fun and unconventional nuances to them, whether it be their divers or otherwise. But I saw this and I was like, what on earth is this? And I was sort of just pulled in, and I was like, well, that is what I'm going to do this episode on this week. We're going to just talk weird and unconventional watches, and I thought this was a good one to lead off with.
That is so cool. I'm actually stunned because I'm looking at this and like, well, I don't have anything nearly this cool in my lineup, but super, super cool watch. And I'm looking at one too. I guess they made it like a pocket watch or like a travel clock version
Yeah, yeah,
with like the crowns at 6 o'clock. Legitimately have never seen that before, ever. But such a funky design. Doxa, if you were ever listening, please bring this back. I think it would be so cool. I mean, why not? That is so nuts to me. It's so 60s too, isn't it?
it is. It's very 60s.
Like this is like I could see Don Draper wearing this watch. Like that would have been such an interesting, such an interesting timepiece.
Yeah, I picture this right there with the old astrographics. Like the just sort of like weird out there watches that you're so used to the sort of the standard format, and these are sort of breaking the mold in that regard. And you're like, whoa, oh, what the hell is that?
It's so cool.
So this is the one I'm leading off with because this is what I sort of was inspired by this week.
It looks like at one point they made like a reissue of it.
They did bring it back because I saw a reissue on them. I don't know how recent that was.
Yeah, it's gotta have been some time ago, and obviously wasn't something that was available in the US market. Yeah, because it wasn't only until recently that Watches of Switzerland became the official Doxa dealer for the US.
Right.
But maybe the previous versions were quartz, it looks like. I should say the reissues were quartz, maybe.
Yeah, because the one I'm looking at is an automatic.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. The original ones from the 60s are definitely mechanical. But the one I'm looking at here that looks kind of like a new relaunch of that from some years ago, the price is like 300 euro. I'm like, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
Not for an automatic watch. So very interesting. Very, very interesting. But cool, man. I'm so glad that you showed this to me. I legitimately have never seen this before.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the fun of it, you know. There's always something weird and out there to discover, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Like an espresso Hublot. Right, was kind of the perfect segue into that, right?
Yes, 100%.
All right, all right, cool. So I don't have anything quite as cool as that, unfortunately. But we were talking about this concept earlier about kind of like black sheep or maybe watches that brands are not typically known for. They produce, but it's not really like their thing. So one that I'm gonna pick is from Panerai, but it's a new watch that I recently saw, and I had never seen any marketing material on it. I had never seen anything that really pushed this watch. And it's more so marketed as a ladies' timepiece,
Okay.
but it's the Panerai Due Luna. Um, this is their 38 millimeter Due case, obviously more marketed towards ladies, more of a dress watch style, but it's just such a cool watch for me because it does have a moon phase complication on it. And if you've never seen this watch, it's super cool. Like it's so thin, it wears incredibly well. There's a couple different versions. Like there's a gold one with a mother of pearl dial, which obviously ladies. There's one on a pink strap, obviously ladies. But there's this kind of like silver opaline dial with red gold markers on a steel bracelet. It looks really nice. And there's like a midnight blue on a blue alligator.
Yeah, I see that.
It is, I don't know, it just feels very not Panerai. We think about sports watches, we think about beefy, burly, submersibles, these crazy things that they've done with their design. And what they've made is something very classic looking, still incorporating their DNA as a brand in terms of the aesthetic, but they've miniaturized it in such a way that makes it feel very elegant. And having the moon phase complication on there as well is also very antithetical to their design. I know they do some high horology pieces, but their classic core stuff doesn't typically feature complications like this. And I have to say, quite honestly, this is probably one of my favorite ways that I've ever seen a moon phase incorporated into a dial because it's almost like a sub dial. Like it's almost like a bicompact style. When you think of like a
Yep.
vintage chrono,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You have the small seconds on one hand, and then you have the moon phase on the other that perfectly mirrors the symmetrical aspects of the dial. And I think it's so well integrated that when I was at a retailer that had one, I literally stopped and I was like, okay, there's not a lot of watches that impress me these days where I physically will stop in my tracks to look at it. And I asked to see it. And I'm like, I'm not a Panerai guy. I'm certainly not a ladies watch guy. Um, but I just think it's a very cool name for the watch, the Luna. I think that the symmetry of the watch is very well done. And for me, if I was going to think about a black sheep within the Panerai line or kind of a model that doesn't necessarily fit, this would be a pick for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are usually used to the small seconds with the date on the other side or nothing at all from
Hmm.
Panerai. This is definitely interesting. I know some people think, 38 millimeters is sacrilegious for them. Uh, I know that people have complained about the water resistance in some of the smaller models and things like that. But again, I don't know how many people are going, actually diving in their Panerai. I know some people do, but I think in a smaller, more elegant model like this, you're not going to have that so much, and
Hmm.
I think that makes sense. I don't think there's a problem with that. But yeah, it looks like it's very well put together, and it's just sort of a slimmed down version of their bigger Luminor case that maybe ostracized some buyers with its size and its bulk before, and now you can accommodate for those people. I mean, whether it be a lady or just somebody with a smaller wrist.
Mm-hmm. Or just you just somebody that likes classically sized watches. I mean, you think about it this way, you still have this massive crown protector, right? That goes across the crown.
Right.
It's gonna add visual weight to it.
Sure.
You notice too that the watch is basically all dial because it has a very thin bezel profile
It
too.
is. Yeah.
So I mean, even though it's a 38, it probably wears a lot more svelte than that. And I tried it on, it looked awesome. Like it looked and it felt natural to me. And I'm typically not a person that shies away from very small watches. This doesn't feel like a small watch. Obviously, it's got this cushion case to it, so it feels more stout, more svelte, as the Houdinki Bros would like to say, right? In all their articles, it's very svelte. I certainly
Slides
think
under
it,
the cup.
yeah, I certainly think that this actually is applicable here, right? This is a cushion case. It's got more of a stout posture to it. It feels a little bit larger on the wrist, and because of that all dial profile, it really doesn't wear as small as the size suggests. So if you are looking for something that's a little bit different, um, check it out. I think it's kind of interesting, and I would totally feel comfortable wearing one. Now, I'm not going to go out and run and get the pink strap version or the gold mother of pearl version, but I would be happy with the midnight blue on a nice dark black strap, or something like a dark brown coffee color strap. I think that would look really nice, or even the steel bracelet version. I think would look really cool too. So, if you're a guy listening to this and you were thinking I'm crazy about rocking the Luna, then just go give it a shot. You might be surprised.
Yeah, and I'm usually not one for mother of pearl dials, but I think in this execution, given that if you look at the moon phase, it has clouds on it. It almost seamlessly blends into the clouds on the moon phase.
Yeah.
And it actually looks really cool because the mother of pearl works very much in that way that you would have sort of the texturing and color transitions on a cloud. So I think it's kind of a neat touch where I'm normally I don't really gravitate towards that type of thing, but I think here it actually works quite nice.
Hey, and there's dudes out there that rock mother of pearl, all right? There's
I
guys that were
mean,
rocking,
Rolex Pearl
diamond.
Master.
Yeah, exactly, right? Well, even still, I mean, you think about like a Datejust, right? There's guys rocking black Tahitian Datejusts,
I mean, hell,
right?
right? We said Zin was doing Mother of Pearl,
Absolutely.
so it's out there. Um, so
Have
speaking of
Have you seen this watch before?
this execution of it,
Yeah, like the Luna.
I might have gone over, it, but I don't think I paid attention to it.
Yeah.
Definitely not in person.
Okay. Yeah. It's cool, man. You should check it out.
So yeah, like I said, speaking of the crown, I have one from them that I've always liked, and it goes back to one of my favorite James Bond movies. And this was worn by, I believe it was Christopher Lee. This is the Rolex King Midas.
Oh yeah.
This is such a cool watch, man. And they have a few different iterations. They have some with more of a squared off case. They have some with sort of a, I guess, a pentagonal case. I think that one's probably my favorite. And
Yeah.
the bracelet sort of seamlessly molds straight in with no lugs. It goes straight into the case. It's just such a cool design, and it's very off of the steel sports idea that we think of with Rolex, or even their sort of sporty precious metal models. This really just isn't any of that. This kind of hangs out with more of their like Cellinis and things like that people
Mm-hmm.
aren't
Mm-hmm.
so akin to or so hip to. Because this was from an era where you thought of tools, right? You thought of either super cool tool watches or uh watches with big provenance, whether it be chronographs or explorer watches. I mean, this is just a neat watch, and I've always liked this. It's just such a quirky execution for them, and it's something you're probably not going to see again unless they bring
Well,
it back in like really some weird fashion.
well, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm seeing this watch so much more
Because
now.
Rihanna wore it.
Is that why?
Yeah, Rihanna wore one, and there was a picture of Rihanna wearing it, and now it's like it's a bit of a pop sensation now. But I saw this on Christopher Lee's wrist in I can't remember which Bond film it is, but I was just like, dude, that's a sick watch. And I mean, they
Yeah.
have these with some funny dials too. Like I think they
Yeah.
have some
Lapis and Tiger's Eye.
wood grain dials and stuff. Really cool, sleek stuff. So this is from an era that I really like and that I really am into as far as Rolex goes. Even though I give them crap for some of their more modern stuff, I mean, I think this is neat. I think this is very cool, and I think they've gone up in price a lot, which kind of
Yeah.
sucks. But
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, this was the watch that was a dog for like 40 years. Like nobody wanted to buy this watch. It was very much the anti-Rolex because when we think of Rolex, we think of steel sports watches, gold sports watches, that kind of thing. And it's such an interesting design, especially the offset case, which is the one that you like, and I also would agree is probably the best looking version where it's kind of flanged out towards the left,
yeah,
you know? So, so, so cool. And I love the fact that it's got this like chunky brick bracelet. Like this looks like gold bars,
yeah,
like that like it's literally forged gold bars. It's so cool. Another detail that I really like about the Midas is I love that they spelled Midas in like Greek text on the dial. I don't know if you've ever noticed that nuance, but it says Midas, but it's written in Greek letters.
yeah.
And story goes, and I only learned this recently because I watched a video about it, but these came in probably one of the most unusual Rolex boxes ever delivered. Do you know how these were delivered?
No.
So if you Google like the Rolex King Midas like box, it's supposed to look like Grecian pottery, like a
Oh, okay.
like a pot. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. And to me, what makes this watch so unique and so cool is the fact that this would literally never happen again. Like
Yeah,
it's
that
it
that
it
is what's
would
neat about it. It's one of those. It's you don't really have to worry about it being reissued. It's sort of a classic in its own right. It's quirky and it's neat, and it'll be what it's going to be. And uh, I remembered appropriately this watch is in Man with the Golden Gun because it's a all gold watch. So
yeah.
fits perfect. The name fits perfect. It was well cast, and Fleming's a Rolex guy, so sort of ties it all together in that respect. But yeah, just a cool watch. And I know it's sort of become a pop sensation lately, but I had my eye on this watch long before that uh, little rise in popularity.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right, man. So I'm gonna pivot to a watch that I personally love, I personally own, and I don't think it gets enough credit, especially in the dive watch space. So for me, as much as people know about this watch, they still think it's an esoteric piece. It's still never gotten the true recognition that it so rightfully deserves, and that's why I'm going to talk about my Omega Pro Prof, which I always think is going to be a black sheep no matter what. It's such a polarizing design, especially given the size for so many people. Not everyone's going to pull off the 55 millimeter case diameter. I'll be honest with you, it does not wear at all like that, especially in the titanium version that I have. But such a cool watch with such an incredible history. And it was just so unfortunate that this particular timepiece um, just couldn't have been made fast enough. And that's why, quite frankly, it's not quite as known in the diving space. So as you guys may or may not know about the story, Doxa and Rolex worked together to create the original gas escape valve. Um, Omega wanted to create a timepiece that could basically withstand saturation gases from penetrating the case. It took much longer to develop. Rolex just put a hole in their case and put a one-way valve on and called it a day. And so they beat the Ploprof to market, even though the Ploprof was a far superior timepiece, given what it could do. So for me, this is one of those watches that I absolutely love. I know in the collector space, people will recognize it, they can appreciate it, but so many people stay away from it, and I don't know why. It is such a freaking cool watch, and I wish it was just one of those watches that would just get more recognition. That's it.
And I purposely stayed away from this one because I knew you were going to take this. I swear to God. Like
Did you really?
Black Sheep, I immediately think Ploprof. But
Yeah,
I was like,
I would.
I was like, he's going to take this one, so I'm not going to
I
take this one. But I
I
think
was.
I think it's just it's sort of in the same idea of the Seiko tuna in that it's
Yeah.
big, it's kind of awkwardly shaped. It seems unappealing at first. It's also quite pricey and not exactly common. So I think that's where a lot of people get dissuaded.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, that doesn't necessarily knock the watch. I just think that it is almost like a barrier to entry for a lot of people that maybe would have a more positive experience if they got to play with it. But I know from our mutual friends, our bros within our group chat and everything that try it on, every single one of them likes it. Every single one of them are all about it. So I think they're right there with you. And I haven't, I'm yet to see somebody who has bought one or got to play with one that was disappointed with it, oddly enough, even given its size and its bulk and everything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I purposely did not take this one because I
It
saw this coming a mile away.
it was certainly a fight for me internally because I was like, okay, I know I want to throw an Omega in here. Do I go X33? Do I go Railmaster? I was like, I don't know, man. I still got to give some love to the Ploprof. So I ultimately chose that one.
Dude, I've had some interesting watch spotting going on lately. I saw a guy at the zoo with a Mission to the Sun moon watch on with a yellow polo shirt. This guy knows exactly what he's doing. There's no he's leaning into this, all right. There's no playing around going yellow polo, yellow moon swatch. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen some real interesting stuff. I did an event. It was a marketing sort of event the other day where I was helping open a building and from the sort of the catering aspect of it. And you know, there's a lot of real estate people there. I saw I saw a newer Pepsi, yes, some Rolex and stuff. I did see a not the newest, but the last iteration two-tone Constellation. And
No
then
way.
the most intriguing one of all, again, this is on the wrist of a either a realtor or a developer, a an SKX, I think it's 173. It's whatever that iteration of SKX, Pepsi bezel on a green on an olive NATO strap. And I'm like, who the hell is this guy? You know what I mean? Like that is very, very out there. This guy knows something. And I was, that I was like, if I'm going to talk to anybody, it's going to be this guy. I was like, if I get a chance, I'm going to talk to him. But it was a pretty busy event, and we were working and everything. But I was just like, of all the watches here, that one's sticking with me because it's so, it's so watch, dude. It's on the nose as hell. I was
Yeah,
like, oh
yeah,
man,
yeah. There's no question about it. Not only is it like an SKX variant, it's not like the standard XKX,
no,
and it's so much more like, oh man.
and it's on a NATO. Like how many people even know how to, you know, wear a NATO?
Yeah, 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 for
Like if
sure.
you're not into it, So I
Yeah.
was like, damn. But yeah, there's definitely been some cool stuff. And then I'm at work today, and they're like, oh yeah, they were talking about well, one of our residents, they're like, yeah, like he's been missing his watch for a while. Like, oh yeah, what is it? It's a Rolex. I'm like, well, now I have to scour this building and find this thing because
It's somewhere.
some poor old chap is missing his Rolex, and I'm like, oh man. I was like, I wonder what the hell it is. I'm sure it's like a Datejust or something, but I'm just like, imagine it's not. Imagine it's like a Steve McQueen or something. It just guy just he just left it in the bathroom or something, and you're like,
Yeah, yeah,
Jesus.
yeah. Yeah. No, no joke. No joke. Oh, breaks my heart to even think about it.
I know, poor guy. But all right, I'm actually gonna go with an Omega for my last one here too. This one is an interesting one, very quirky. I don't even know how you would describe this case. I guess it's sort of from the TV dial, TV case era. Um, this is what they call the Jedi
Oh yeah.
Seamaster.
Yeah.
The reference I got is 176.005. I mean, this is as funky as they come. It's Seamaster chronograph. It's got so it's got two subdials, one at
Hmm.
6 o'clock and then one at 9 o'clock. And then it's
Yeah.
got a
Yeah.
date at 3. It's got sort of the funky, almost Flightmaster type hand. handset. It's just all over the place, and that's what I like about it. I mean, the case is bulky. It's got a ton of beveling on it. Uh, there's a really cool rendition in with a blue dial. It's got
Yep.
yellow accents. It's got some red in there and some different shades of blue going around the 24-hour time sub dial. And there's just a ton going on. It's a lot like the Flightmaster, except I think I'm more of a Seamaster guy myself.
Hmm.
It's just cool. It's super cool, and when I think Omega, especially Omega chronograph, this is not what I think of, and I think that's what I like about it is that this is just it's it's almost like the old Seiko or Citizen, like the bullheads and like sort of those just
Yeah.
bulky chronographs that have sort of that charm about them. And that's what I like about it. This thing is just it's kind of all over the place, but it's really cool. I don't know why it's called the Jedi, but it's neat.
Yeah, yeah, I've never known that myself either, and that's kind of embarrassing to admit, given that I'm such a big Omega fan. Um, it's just a nickname that people assigned to it. There was actually like a blacked version of this as well, like
Yes.
a PVD version. They call that the one, the Darth Vader.
Okay, I see
So
it.
I don't know exactly where the Star Wars connotation comes in, but somebody named it the Jedi, people ran with it. But yeah, dude, this is such a cool watch, and it's so funky. And I love the way that the time is told on this watch because, as you mentioned, you have two sub dials. The bottom one is a 12-hour counter for your chrono. The top one at 9 o'clock is both a 24-hour timer. So basically, it's a day and night indication, not
Yeah, I see
GMT,
day
but day
night.
and
Yep.
night. And you're running seconds. But what's cool about it is the day and night indication is literally a rotating wheel. So it's a triangular marker in red,
Okay,
and
yeah.
then the black wheel rotates as the time passes to indicate day and night. And then you have a giant chronograph second hand, and underneath the chrono second hand, you have a hand with a little airplane on it. That is your chronograph minute hand. So you have a giant minute hand that moves around the dial to track your
Right, yeah.
elapsed minutes for the chrono. It is so cool.
So
Um,
uh featuring the Hanwhan caliber 861, which is a well-known Speedmaster caliber as well. The Jedi received its nickname as a result of the late Chuck Maddox's interest in sci-fi movies and his naming the hard metal black-coated Seamaster 145.023 the Darth Vader. So this being the lighter version is the Jedi.
okay, all right.
There we go.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, yeah. It all comes back to Chuck Maddox at some point.
Yeah, appropriately, right?
It all goes back to him, dude. That's cool. Um, there you go. There you go. But yeah, super, super cool watch. I love it. It's
There's
uh
also there's a similar it's not exact, but it's a similar layout. There's a similar layout old vintage Tissot that I actually like a lot. It's got the same 9 and 6 sub dials dated 3. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but it's just blacked out. It's got a little bit of orange accent on it. It's really cool, and they're not expensive at all on the secondary market. They're like $800. It's really neat. So if you can't
well
maybe if
well
you can't
you
afford a Jedi, maybe you can get into one of those. I can't remember the name of it for some reason. I think I
do
might have one in
you
my
do
search
you know
history here.
why Tiso that looks like this?
Well, I would assume because they belong to the same group, but
Yeah, well, so what's interesting in history.
Tissot Navigator chronograph. That's it.
Okay. So the Tissot Navigator, let me just double check this.
I would assume it was the Swatch connection, but I could be wrong.
So this actually would predate the Swatch
Oh, what it?
connection. Yeah.
Okay.
But one thing that's interesting that a lot of people don't know is back in 1930s, the watch industry went through kind of a crisis period. And essentially what happened is you saw the first formation of kind of a watch conglomerate, and Omega and Swatch partnered up. I'm sorry, Omega and Tissot partnered up alongside Lamania.
That makes
So
a
you
lot of
had a
sense.
movement manufacturer partnering with two different established watch brands. And basically, as part of that agreement, Lamania would manufacture chronograph movements for Tissot and Omega. The Tissot versions would just be at a lower price point. So this navigator probably has a Lamania caliber of some type in it, which is very similar to the one that would have been probably used in the Jedi.
Very cool. Yeah, these are nice, dude. I like these a lot.
Yeah,
If
and
you're
the
if you're
I
into that
mean,
like motorsport black and orange with a little white sort of panda, that
yeah.
this is a dope if you can't afford a Porsche of or Fina,
Yeah, yeah, right.
right? This is like a cute little adjacent.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna go with my last watch. This is a kind of more of a value option. Um, it's from a brand that we talk about quite often, our boys at Fairer, and specifically this particular model because Fairer gets a lot of press, rightfully so. They make a great product. But this is a watch that when it came out, it was released. I think it initially sold it through. I know it's sold out on the website now, but I can't imagine that they produced that many versions of them because I don't really see them posted or listed anywhere. But it's the Fairer Bradfield. This is their pilot watch. And specifically, my favorite version of them is the white dial with kind of the light blue inner ring and the yellow loomed hands. Um, Fairer, when people think about Fairer, they think of the playful use of colors, but they think of like GMT watches. They think of diving models. I don't see a lot of people think about Fairer as the manufacturer for a pilot's watch. And this is honestly probably one of my favorite pilot's watches that has ever been made. Um, I'm not a big pilot watch guy personally. Never had one, never really had a desire to pick one up, but I certainly would for this watch. It's such a cool modern take on the pilot design, especially with the big kind of leafy, hour and minute hand. But the loom on this thing is an absolute monster.
Yeah, look at
Um,
that.
oh my gosh, it is, and maybe when you post a photo, post a loom shot of this watch. It's so good. It's unbelievable. So like all of the Arabic numerals that are around the dial are blackened, and then they applied Superluminova around the numeral, which is so unusual. I've never really seen anybody do this. So basically, the numerals give an afterglow,
Yeah, it gives
right?
very like a neon sign look.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. And then they applied a full coating of loom to the internal part of the dial in that light blue section so that you can see the graduations in the dark, which is insane to me.
Yeah, they
And then
crushed
you
this.
and then you contrast that with the big hands in an alternate loom color so you can see them stand out against the blue loom of everything else. This to me is such a cool watch. I don't think it gets enough recognition. It is such an amazing design. It looks so clean and fresh and new, but still kind of vintagey. And the price point, it's insane. It's under $1,000.
Wow.
$895 US. Um, I think this watch is freaking cool. And other than maybe Fairer's own Instagram page, I've never seen anybody post this watch. I'll see all the other Fairers that come through, right? All the other models that they highlight very well, but I've literally never seen anybody post this watch. And the moment it came out, I was immediately attracted to it, and I probably should have jumped on it and bought it because now they're sold out, and I don't know how I'm gonna get one, but it's such a cool watch.
Yeah, it's something familiar style wise, but it's also just very different and in their own.
It's in their own way. I
Yeah,
mean, it's
it's
like
very fair in
uh,
that regard, but it's also a very familiar pilot's layout, so that it's not too far off the beaten path that it's unrecognizable. Like you get that this is a pilot by the handset, by the crown, by just the general layout, but just the way they went about the execution of the dial and their numerals and their seconds hand and things. This is a fair, and we talk about them enough, and they do things very much their own way, and they're very creative, and I think that's where they score all their bonus points. And like you said, this
yeah,
the loom execution is really cool. It's very original. There's a lot to be said for that, and
like
I hope to see more things like this.
why would you buy an IWC? You could just buy this. You know what I mean? Like, and even because they have a few different pilot watches in their lineup. I think there's a total of 4 in the collection. Each one has its own name and colorway. And all of the other ones look more like a traditional pilot watch. But this one with the light blue and the white, it's so different. Um, I don't know what it is, man. It's yeah.
And
If
I've seen a white dial pilot's watch before, but still, generally, when you think pilot, you think black, brown, maybe gray. You're thinking a lot of steel, earth tones. This is like the exact opposite.
Yeah.
This is like it's just playful. It's almost like uh putting like the Mario Kart spin on a racing game where normally you think of like, very serious, very, dark and sleek, and now here you're getting something playful and bright and colorful. It's just very neat, and it's cool to see somebody sort of visualize this and then get it off the ground in this respect.
Yeah. And still make it legible. That's the other thing too.
Oh, very, very much so.
Even in the dark, you could see this thing a mile away.
Yeah, that would be a cool one to see. Imagine like you're on a flight and they kill the lights and it just like bing, and you're like, you see the guy
Yeah.
next to you, like, whoa, nice.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's kind of like what my Poprof does when the full bezel looms up
Yeah.
and you get on a dark plane. Always someone's like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." I'm like, "Yeah, it is. I know. You don't tell me. It's fine."
Yeah, that is the one thing. Non-watch people will still marvel at Loom no matter what. Like if your watch has
Yeah,
good Loom, they'll be
exactly.
like, "Oh, that's neat," you know. Even though every single person I feel like knows what Indiglo is at this point, which isn't Loom, but still everybody's seen that party trick. Like they're still amazed by, oh, that's neat. Like that glows in the dark. Yeah, okay, yeah, it's cool. All right. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I kept it to 3 just because I wanted to keep this reasonable length, because I could probably go on all night with these and just keep rolling them out there. But yeah, if you don't have anything else, I think we can wrap this one up.
That's it for me, man.
All right, thank you everybody for joining us again. Once again, sorry for the delay on the episode this week. Just kind of some ups and downs, some different things, just a lot of moving parts and different schedules. And yeah, we'll probably try to get one out earlier next week, to say the least. So
Hopefully on time.
yeah, so yeah, we'll hopefully catch you then. But for now, enjoy this one, and we'll see you soon on episode 82. So peace.
Thanks, guys.